What kind of man orders a DNA test over a joke? That's what I thought when the envelope came with his name and a lab address printed neatly on it. I only said our son looked like my ex to make a point. How could I have known it would tear everything apart? My name is Isolde Wren, but everyone calls me Izzy. I'm 35, a dental hygienist, a mother, and apparently the kind of woman whose husband thinks she needs to be tested. Not in a romantic way. An actual DNA test. When I first saw the envelope from the lab, I thought it was junk mail. Then I saw Daniel's name printed neatly above the return address, and my stomach twisted. I told myself it had to be a mistake, maybe some medical insurance thing, but deep down, I already knew why it was there. It all started with a joke, one stupid comment at dinner that was supposed to make everyone laugh. Ethan had been showing us his new school photo, all proud of his missing tooth, and I said something like, "He's starting to look more like Owen every year." Owen, my ex. My sister Clara laughed, said it was true, same smile and all. Even Daniel smiled at first, though it didn't reach his eyes. He asked why I'd even compare our son to another man, and I told him not to be dramatic. "Relax," I said. "It's just genetics. People see what they want to see." The table went quiet after that. I tried to change the subject, talking about Ethan's new teacher, but Daniel barely spoke for the rest of the meal. I remember thinking he was overreacting. He always did. He took everything too seriously, always trying to turn moments into moral lessons. I told myself it was just his pride acting up again, that engineer brain of his calculating offenses. But later that night, when he kissed Ethan goodnight, he stared at him a little too long. Not with anger, but with something colder. I brushed it off, poured myself a glass of wine, and texted Clara about how moody he was being. She said all men get weird when you mention an ex, that it was probably nothing. I believed her. I even laughed about it. But the next morning, Daniel got up earlier than usual, ironed his shirt, and left without saying goodbye. When I checked the mail later, that envelope was sitting right on top, heavy in my hand. That was when I stopped laughing. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The night after the joke, the house felt different. Not louder, not colder, just too quiet, like everything was waiting for something to happen. Daniel went through the motions as if nothing had changed. He made dinner, asked Ethan about school, laughed at one of his knock-knock jokes. He even kissed me on the cheek before sitting down. It should have felt normal, but it didn't. There was something rehearsed about it, like he was following a script instead of living in the moment. I tried to fix it with charm. I always could. I told him he looked handsome in his new shirt, and he said thank you, polite but distant. I asked about work, and he said it was fine. He didn't ask me a single thing about my day. I made sure to talk enough for both of us, about the patients at the clinic, about Clara's latest dating disaster, about Ethan losing another baby tooth. I even tried to bring up the joke again, to clear the air. I said I'd just been teasing, that people shouldn't take things so seriously. Daniel didn't look up from his plate when he said, "Some jokes sound different depending on who's listening." That irritated me. "You can't honestly think I meant anything by that," I said. He looked up then, calm as always. "Doesn't matter what you meant. It matters what it said." I laughed under my breath, half amused, half angry. "You're being ridiculous. Ethan is yours, obviously. People say dumb things. I do it all the time." He didn't respond. He just went back to eating, every movement slow and measured. I kept waiting for him to snap, to accuse me outright, but he didn't. That scared me more than yelling would have. After dinner, I cleaned the dishes while he helped Ethan with his math homework. Their voices drifted from the other room, steady, patient, normal. I tried to tell myself this would blow over. It always did. Daniel got quiet, then logical, then forgiving. That was our pattern. He was predictable, and I knew how to play predictable. But when I went upstairs later, I noticed his laptop open on the desk. The screen showed an email draft addressed to Genetics Diagnostics. There was no message, just the subject line. Order request. Confidential testing. My hands went cold. I closed the laptop gently, as if that would erase what I'd seen. When Daniel came up a few minutes later, I was already in bed pretending to scroll through my phone. He brushed his teeth, turned off the light, and climbed in beside me. His breathing was slow, even, like nothing was wrong. I whispered, "Are you angry with me?" He answered softly, "Should I be?" I hated that answer. It was like being handed an empty box and told to guess what's inside. "I didn't mean anything by that comment," I said again. "You know that, right?" He sighed. "I know what you said. That's not what I asked." "Then maybe I don't know," he said, and rolled onto his side. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, furious at him for making me feel guilty when I hadn't done anything. It wasn't my fault he was insecure. Men get this strange ego thing when you remind them you had a life before them. I'd only mentioned Owen because Ethan's smile in that photo reminded me of him. Just a memory, not a confession. The next morning, Daniel was already dressed when I came downstairs. He was packing Ethan's lunch, humming softly. I told him he didn't have to do that I could handle it. He said he wanted to help, smiling without showing teeth. When I asked if he was still upset, he said he wasn't, that he'd been overthinking. "See?" I said lightly. "I told you it was nothing." He nodded, still smiling. "You did." Then he kissed Ethan on the forehead and told him to get his shoes. I watched from the window as they left for school. Daniel put Ethan in the car, then paused before getting in. He stood there for a moment, looking up at the house, and even from that distance, I could see his jaw tighten. When the car disappeared down the street, I checked the desk again. The laptop was gone, but an envelope sat where it had been, sealed, addressed to the same lab. No note, no explanation. I stared at it for a long time, the weight of it pressing against my fingers. I almost opened it, almost tore it apart, but something stopped me. If I touched it, I'd be admitting that the joke had consequences. I wasn't ready for that. So I set it back down, poured myself coffee, and told myself Daniel was bluffing. He wasn't the type to make scenes. He was rational, calm, predictable. He'd get whatever this was out of his system and go back to normal. But as the coffee grew cold in my hands, I realized something that made my stomach turn. Rational men don't bluff. They plan. At work, everything smelled like mint and disinfectant, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I dropped a tray of instruments before my first patient even walked in. The clang echoed through the small room, and my co-worker, Lila, peeked her head in, smiling awkwardly. She asked if I was okay, and I said I'd just had too much coffee. That was a lie, of course. I hadn't slept. I kept thinking about the envelope sitting on the desk at home and whether he'd mailed it yet. Between appointments, I texted Clara. "You're not going to believe this," I wrote. "I think Daniel actually ordered a DNA test." She replied with a string of laughing emojis. "What? For Ethan? Oh my God, he's insane." I typed back, "I know. He's being dramatic again." She wrote, "Maybe he's testing you, not Ethan. You know how boring men look for excitement in weird ways." That made me laugh out loud, which helped for about a minute. Then I caught my reflection in the mirror, smile too wide, eyes tired, and it didn't feel funny anymore. When lunch came around, I checked my phone again. No messages from Daniel, no calls, just a notification from an old social media account I hadn't used in years. A friend request. Owen Vale. My stomach dropped, then fluttered. It had been over a decade, but his name still did something strange to me. I should have ignored it, but I didn't. I accepted, and within minutes he messaged, "Didn't think you'd still have that same bright smile in your photo. Some things never change." I typed back without thinking, "You still know how to flatter people, huh?" He said he'd seen me post about working near the old mall, that he was in town for a few months doing sales. We exchanged a few harmless jokes about getting old and hating Mondays. It was stupid, innocent, like old friends catching up. Except it didn't feel innocent. It felt like air after holding my breath too long. By the time I got home, Daniel and Ethan were already back. Ethan was coloring at the kitchen table. Daniel was in the living room, sorting papers. I asked how his day went. He said it was productive. Then he looked at me and asked how mine was, but not in a curious way. It sounded like a test. I said work was fine. I didn't mention Owen. During dinner, I tried to make small talk again, pretending nothing was wrong. Ethan was babbling about his art project, and I smiled, nodding at all the right moments. When Daniel excused himself early, saying he had emails to finish, I could tell Ethan noticed. He asked why Daddy was mad. I told him Daddy was just tired. He seemed satisfied with that, but I wasn't. After putting Ethan to bed, I went to Daniel's office. The door was half open. He was sitting at his desk, laptop glowing. I asked what he was working on, and he said budgets. His tone was polite, detached. I leaned against the doorway and said I missed when he used to tell me about his day. He said he still could if I wanted the truth. That made me freeze. I told him not everything needed to be analyzed. He said maybe it did. I wanted to shout, but instead I smiled, the same practiced smile that always softened him. You know, I said, you're scaring me a little. You act like you don't even trust me. He looked up finally, eyes calm. Do you trust yourself? That sentence hit harder than I expected. I didn't answer. I turned and walked out, slamming the door a little harder than necessary. In the bedroom, I opened my phone again. Another message from Owen. You still married? Or should I be asking carefully? I stared at it for a long time before replying, still married. Complicated, though. He sent back, aren't they all? Maybe we should grab coffee and talk about it. Just catching up. I told myself I wasn't going to reply, that I'd delete the message, go to sleep, forget it. But I didn't. I kept reading his words over and over until I heard Daniel's footsteps in the hallway. I hid the phone under my pillow, pretending to scroll through something innocent. He walked in, kissed the top of my head and said, Don't stay up too late. I won't, I said softly. He turned off the light and lay beside me, still as stone. And in that silence, my phone buzzed once more. Owen had sent another message. Tomorrow, 12:30, Cafe Verde. You owe me a coffee for disappearing all those years. I didn't reply, but I didn't delete it either. I met Owen the next day. I told myself it was harmless, that I just needed to clear the air, to prove to myself there was nothing left between us. That was the story I rehearsed in my head as I parked outside Cafe Verde. I even texted Clara before I went in. Don't judge me. I'm only staying 20 minutes. She sent back a heart emoji and said I deserved to feel seen once in a while. Owen was already there, sitting by the window, same careless grin I remembered from college. Time had softened him a little, but not in a bad way. He stood when he saw me, said I looked exactly the same. I laughed, said he needed glasses. He asked about my family, about Ethan, about Daniel. I told him everything was steady, which was the polite word for dull. He said marriage never looked like my style. I rolled my eyes, said responsibility grows on you eventually. We talked for almost an hour, sipping lukewarm coffee, pretending this was casual. When I stood to leave, he touched my hand lightly and said it was nice seeing someone who still remembered who he used to be. I told him it was nice seeing someone who remembered who I used to be. Driving home, I told myself that was it, just closure. But as soon as I got back, guilt mixed with a strange thrill. Daniel was in the garage, fixing something with the toolbox. He looked up, wiped his hands, and asked where I'd gone. I said I'd grabbed lunch with a friend from work. He nodded, said that was good, and went back to tightening a screw. That evening, we had dinner at his mother's house. Marianne had invited us to celebrate her birthday, and the whole family came. His brothers, their wives, the kids. I put on a bright dress and made sure to smile the whole time. Everyone laughed and ate too much, and for a while it almost felt normal. Then someone brought up family resemblance. One of Daniel's brothers said Ethan had Daniel's focus, but my eyes. Marianne smiled and said, those blue eyes definitely came from Isolde's side. Then Clara, who'd had too much wine, joked that Ethan's dimple was pure Owen. The table went quiet for a second, then everyone laughed, everyone except Daniel. He set his fork down carefully and asked, in that calm way of his, who Owen was again. Clara said, Izzy's college boyfriend, remember? I tried to laugh it off, saying she was mixing stories again, but the damage was done. After dessert, Daniel excused himself to take a call. I found him later on the back porch, leaning against the railing. I asked if he was angry. He said he was just thinking. I told him Clara had a big mouth. He said people tend to joke about what they notice. That night, back home, the air between us felt paper thin. He showered and got into bed without saying much. I tried to sound normal, asking about his mom's birthday gift and if he had work in the morning. He just said yes to everything, barely looking at me. When I asked if he was going to ignore me forever, he said he wasn't ignoring me, he was just taking inventory. The phrase made me uneasy. Inventory of what? I asked. He said, of what's real and what's performance. Then he rolled over and turned off the lamp. I didn't sleep. My phone buzzed once. Owen, texting, you looked good today. Glad we met up. I deleted it instantly, terrified Daniel would somehow see it. The next morning, Daniel was gone early again, but this time he'd left something behind on the counter. A small receipt. My name wasn't on it, but I didn't need it to be. Genetics diagnostics. Payment confirmed. Overnight processing. My legs went weak. I sat down at the table, staring at it until the numbers blurred. When Clara came by later, I told her what had happened. She laughed at first, then stopped when she saw my face. She said, Izzy, you have to tell him before that thing comes back. Tell him what? I asked. There's nothing to tell. Then why are you shaking? I didn't answer. Instead, I crumpled the receipt and shoved it deep into the trash. That evening, Daniel came home later than usual. He kissed Ethan on the head, smiled at me, and said dinner smelled great, even though I hadn't cooked anything yet. He sat down at the table, quiet and thoughtful. I waited for him to mention the receipt, the test, something. He didn't. When he finally looked at me, his eyes were steady. You should get some rest, he said. Tomorrow might be a long day. I asked why. He smiled faintly and said, results usually come faster when you pay extra. Then he got up, kissed Ethan again, and went upstairs. I sat there frozen, the silence louder than any argument we'd ever had. The next morning started like a movie scene where the tension hides under normal sounds, water boiling, Ethan humming, a spoon tapping against a mug. Daniel moved around the kitchen like everything was fine. He asked if I wanted toast, if Ethan had packed his backpack, if I'd be home early. His voice was calm, gentle even, but I could feel it in the air. He already knew something I didn't want to face. After they left, I sat at the table, staring at the same spot where the receipt had been. The house felt too still. My phone buzzed. A new message from Owen. You've been quiet. Did I say something wrong? I stared at it for a minute before replying, I can't talk. Things are complicated right now. He wrote back, then let me make it simple. Meet me, just to talk. I didn't answer. I turned off my phone, got dressed, and went into work. But I couldn't focus. Every patient, every sound of the suction tool felt like static. Around noon, Clara stopped by the clinic to drop off coffee. She took one look at me and asked if I'd slept. I told her about the receipt, about Daniel's strange calmness. She frowned. You should confess, Izzy, even if it was just once. It's better if it comes from you. I shook my head. There's nothing to confess. Nothing happened with Owen. She gave me that look, the one she used when she didn't believe me, but didn't want to argue. Then you've got nothing to worry about, she said softly. After work, I drove home slower than usual, hoping Daniel wouldn't be there yet. But when I pulled into the driveway, his car was parked neatly in its spot. The blinds were half drawn, the lights on. Inside, Ethan was in his room playing quietly, and Daniel was sitting at the kitchen table. A single envelope lay in front of him. I froze in the doorway. What's that? He looked up, his eyes steady. The results came this afternoon. My throat went dry. You opened it? Not yet. I tried to laugh. Then why not throw it away? It's pointless. We already know the truth. He didn't answer, just pushed the envelope toward me. Then you open it. I didn't move. Daniel, this is insane. You're turning a stupid joke into a family crisis. How could you even do this to Ethan? I didn't do anything to him, he said quietly. You did. That hit like a slap. You're accusing me of something that isn't even real. He leaned back in his chair. Then prove it. Open it. Tears stung my eyes, but I wasn't sure if they were real or just part of my defense. I sat down, took the envelope, and held it tight. I couldn't open it. I was terrified of what it might say, terrified it might be fine, because then I'd still have to face how far he'd gone. I pushed it back across the table. If you trust a piece of paper more than me, go ahead. He looked at it for a long time, then at me. It's not about paper, it's about peace. I stood up so fast, the chair scraped the floor. You're humiliating me. You've turned our marriage into a courtroom. He didn't flinch. You made the joke. I'm just listening to the punchline. I wanted to scream. Instead, I ran upstairs, locked the bedroom door, and sat on the floor. My heart wouldn't stop racing. I tried to think of something to say that would undo it all, some smart line, some apology, but every sentence I imagined sounded empty. When I finally went downstairs an hour later, he was sitting in the same spot, the envelope still unopened. He looked exhausted. I'm sorry, I said quietly. I shouldn't have joked. I was trying to be funny, and it came out wrong. He nodded slowly. You always say the wrong things when you're scared. I wanted to ask what he meant, but before I could, there was a knock at the door. Daniel got up, walked calmly to answer it, and came back with a small package in his hands. He didn't open it, just set it on the table beside the envelope. What's that? I asked. Legal documents, he said. You'll see. I laughed bitterly. You're unbelievable. He met my eyes. No, Izzy. I'm just finished pretending. He went upstairs to put Ethan to bed, leaving both envelopes in front of me. I didn't touch either. I just sat there, staring at them until my reflection blurred in the glossy surface of the table. When he came back down, I asked softly, So what happens after this? He said, Whatever the truth decides. Then he turned off the light. The next morning felt like the calm before a storm. Daniel left early with Ethan, saying he had errands to run after drop-off. He didn't kiss me goodbye. The two envelopes were still on the table when I came downstairs, side by side, like silent threats. I couldn't even look at them without feeling sick. Around 10, my phone rang. It was Clara. You need to know something, she said. Her voice was low, cautious. Daniel called me last night. He wanted to confirm some dates. He said it's for legal reasons. My chest tightened. What dates? The year Ethan was born, the last time you saw Owen, things like that. I pressed my hand to my forehead. He's really doing this? Izzy, she said softly. I think you should get a lawyer, just in case. That afternoon, I got my answer. Daniel texted me to meet him at an address downtown, Collins and Barnes law offices. I told myself it was a misunderstanding, maybe a mediation meeting, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. When I arrived, Daniel was already there, sitting at a polished wooden table with a man in a gray suit. The receptionist smiled at me, oblivious to the tension, and led me in. Daniel stood politely when I entered. "Thank you for coming," he said. "What is this?" I asked, trying to sound confident. The lawyer gestured to a chair. "Mrs. Wren, we're simply here to go over some preliminary matters. Financial protections, temporary custody planning. Mr. Wren has been advised to take formal steps while certain questions are clarified." I laughed out of disbelief. "Questions? You mean your client's paranoia?" Daniel didn't flinch. "You told a joke, Izzy. I'm just taking it seriously. You're out of your mind." The lawyer's tone stayed even. "Mr. Wren is acting within his rights. No accusations, no hostility, only documentation." He slid a folder toward me. "These are draft agreements for joint custody and property protection." I didn't touch it. "You think you can scare me with paperwork?" Daniel spoke softly. "It's not about fear, it's about fairness." I turned to him. "You think you're being noble, don't you? The calm, rational victim. Everyone will feel sorry for you." He met my eyes. "I'm not looking for sympathy, Izzy. I'm looking for truth." The lawyer cleared his throat and continued explaining, but I wasn't listening. I stared at Daniel's hands, steady, patient, folded neatly on the table. He wasn't angry anymore. He was something worse. Certain. When it was my turn to sign, I shoved the pen away. "I'm not agreeing to this circus until you admit you've lost your mind." Daniel didn't react. He simply took another envelope from his briefcase and set it in front of me. "You don't need to sign," he said. "You just need to see this." I knew what it was before I opened it. Still, I did. The words blurred, but I saw enough. Paternity result. Excluded. I felt my throat close. "This is wrong," I said quickly. "Tests make mistakes all the time." "The samples were verified by 2 labs," Daniel said quietly. Tears burned my eyes. "You're destroying our family over numbers on a page." He shook his head. "No, Izzy. The numbers just told me what I already felt." I pushed the papers away. "You're cruel." He stood, collecting the folder. "No, just done pretending." The lawyer asked if we wanted to schedule another meeting. Daniel said no, not yet. Then he turned to me. "You can stay in the house until things are finalized. It's still yours." "Still mine?" I repeated, the words catching. "What about Ethan?" He looked away for a moment before answering. "I'll always be there for him. That doesn't need a signature." I followed him outside into the parking lot, my hands shaking. "Daniel, please," I said. "You can't do this. You can't just walk away." He stopped by his car, opened the door, and said quietly, "You were right about one thing. He's a beautiful boy." I felt my knees weaken. "Daniel." But he got in, started the engine, and drove off. No yelling, no anger, no satisfaction, just silence. I stood there alone, holding the envelope, reading the same line over and over until the ink blurred. Somewhere between the words excluded and verified, my own laughter from that night echoed in my mind. The joke that started it all didn't sound funny anymore. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. Every sound echoed too long, like the walls were waiting for someone who wasn't coming back. Daniel had taken Ethan for the weekend, said it was good for him to spend time with Mary Ann. He didn't ask if I wanted to come. He didn't even look at me when he packed their overnight bag. Just a calm, "We'll be back Sunday evening," like a man stating the weather. For the first time in years, I was alone. I walked from room to room, touching everything that used to feel ordinary. The couch where Ethan learned to crawl, the chair where Daniel used to read his reports, the spot by the kitchen counter where I'd made that stupid joke. It felt like a ghost house built out of my own mistakes. I poured myself wine, though it was barely noon. I texted Clara. "He's gone through with it. Everything. The papers, the test, all of it." She called immediately. "Izzy, listen to me. Maybe you should apologize properly. He's still your husband. Maybe—" "It's too late," I said. "He's not angry anymore. He's calm. That's worse." She was quiet for a moment. "You didn't really love Owen, did you?" I laughed bitterly. "I don't even know if I loved anyone. I just didn't want to feel small." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the couch with the documents spread around me, reading words that didn't feel real. Joint custody, property adjustment, final verification, my own name printed beside his in cold black ink. I thought of calling Daniel, of begging him to talk. But what would I say? It was only a joke? It didn't mean anything? He'd already stopped believing my words long before the test. The next morning, his car pulled into the driveway. My heart jumped, thinking maybe he'd come to talk, maybe to forgive. He came in quietly holding Ethan's backpack and a small box. Ethan ran upstairs to grab a toy, leaving us alone. I tried to smile. "You came back early," Daniel nodded. "He wanted his stuffed dinosaur." He set the box on the table. "I brought the rest of your documents." "Daniel, please," I said. "Can we not do this here? Not in front of him?" He looked around the kitchen like he barely recognized it. "There's no performance left, Izzy. This is just paperwork now." I stepped closer. "We can fix this. I can fix this. It was one mistake. A comment, not a crime." He met my eyes calmly. "You always say that. One mistake, one joke, one misunderstanding. But it's never just one, is it?" Tears stung, and I reached for his hand. He pulled back. "You can't erase everything over a test." "It wasn't the test," he said softly. "It was the years of pretending before it." I shook my head. "I never pretended." He smiled faintly, tired. "You did every time you laughed at me in front of people, every time you turned guilt into a performance." My voice broke. "Daniel, I didn't want to hurt you." "I know," he said. "You just wanted to feel powerful." He opened the box and pulled out an envelope. "This is the final paperwork. I signed everything. The house is in your name now." "What does that mean?" I whispered. "It means you can stay. You'll have the space you always said you needed." I covered my face. "And Ethan?" "He'll know I love him," Daniel said. "That's enough." I looked at him through tears. "You can't just walk away. We're still a family." He shook his head gently. "Families don't survive on half-truths." I wanted to scream, to beg, to make him feel something, anger, pity, anything. But he just stood there, still, steady, done. Ethan came running back into the room holding his toy. He hugged Daniel's leg and said he didn't want him to go. Daniel crouched down, kissed the top of his head, and whispered something I couldn't hear. When he stood, he looked at me one last time. "You were right about one thing," he said quietly. "He's a beautiful boy." Then he left. The door closed softly, not a slam, not even a pause. Just the sound of finality disguised as kindness. I stood there for a long time, the morning light spilling over the table, shining on the envelope he'd left behind. My hands shook as I picked it up. It wasn't just paper, it was proof that I'd built my life on a joke I couldn't take back. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.